Pie in the Sky Media. This series contains adult language and descriptions of graphic violence throughout. Listener discretion is advised.
She never once considered what to do once he was dead. She knew she wanted the money. She devoted a great deal of time to arranging his murder. But once the body hit the floor, she had no plans beyond that.
Welcome back to Criminal Mischief with Carolyn and Brandon. You're listening to episode 111, Wicked. In November of 2000, 38-year-old Barbara Opel is struggling. She's a single mom raising 3 kids on her own. Her eldest daughter is 13, her son is 11, and her youngest daughter is 7 years old. Barbara and her kids live in Everett, Washington. She was unemployed, and for the past decade had been moving from place to place with her kids. Stable housing was always an issue. She'd get enough money to rent an apartment or motel, get behind on her bills, and then was forced to uproot her children. Life had been extremely stressful for the kids because of the financial hardships, but also life with their mother, Barbara, wasn't easy because she was a domineering and abusive woman. Here's author Burl Barer.
Mother was quite volatile, and so it was like, keep mommy happy. We don't want mommy yelling. You know, what mom says, we do.
Barbara was abusive to her children, and she expected total obedience, especially from her 13-year-old daughter, Heather, who she considered her right-hand man. Heather was bright, and despite her difficult childhood, she appeared to be, at least on the outside, well-adjusted. She got good grades and excelled in sports, especially basketball.
Brilliant young lady, very great student, basketball player, and the mother drove everybody nuts because she'd scream at her kids at basketball games. You know, you stupid so-and-so, why did you do this better? And give everybody a bad time. As far as Heather was concerned, anything to please her mother.
But Barbara was also a master manipulator, not only of her own kids, but of their friends. There was a duality to her. She was hardcore and tough, rude, but she was also the type of mom who hung out with her kids and their friends. She knew how to act like she was the cool mom. In the fall of 2000, things started looking up for Barbara and her children when she met a guy named Jerry Hyman. Jerry was 64 years old, and the two struck up a conversation at a local fast food restaurant. Jerry shared with Barbara that he had retired from Boeing, but life wasn't easy because he was taking care of his 89-year-old mom, Evelyn, who lived with him. It was tough because his mom was confined to a wheelchair and she suffered from Alzheimer's. On top of that, Jerry was dealing with his own health issues. He'd been diagnosed with terminal cancer. Barbara listened to Jerry, seemingly very sympathetic. In fact, she had an idea that could help Jerry. She told him that her kids could go over to his house after school and on weekends to help care for his mother so he could at least run errands. Here's Barbara Opel explaining their arrangement.
It started out where my kids were going over after school and on the weekends and watching Grandma while he ran his errands, and they were making like $30 a day.
What is his mother's name?
Evelyn.
And how old is she?
89.
Did you guys refer to her by any other names?
Grandma.
And how old is Jerry?
About 63, 64.
Shortly after this bargain was struck, Barbara and her kids needed a place to live. And in the short time that Jerry had gotten to know Barbara, he believed that she was a really nice, caring woman. So he offered to let her and her children live in the basement of his home in exchange for Barbara taking care of his mother. It was a big house, so there was plenty of room. She and the kids lived in the basement. Evelyn's room was on the main floor, and then Jerry's room was on the upper floor. After years of hardship and struggle, Barbara and her kids were in a safe, stable environment.
Barbara gives a great sales pitch, and he hires her. And she and her daughter move into Jerry's Hyman's house there in Everett, and she's taking care of Grandma, and so is her daughter, and everything's delightful. Jerry, however, has cancer, but he's not really taking care of himself. His efforts are focused more on his mother, taking care of her.
But Barbara isn't content to take care of Evelyn. That's the last thing she wants to do. She often delegates many of the responsibilities of care to her teenage daughter, Heather, bathing, feeding, and helping Evelyn get dressed and undressed. And Evelyn's Alzheimer's is so advanced that she really can't complain to Jerry. She isn't capable. And Jerry's personality is he always likes to think the best of people. He's a very generous person. And around the holidays, he gives Barbara a few $100s to buy her kids Christmas presents and money to get a tree so that they could have a really wonderful holiday. Jerry also gives Barbara access to his checkbook so she can buy the things as needed to run the household and pay the bills. But Barbara, a constant manipulator, takes advantage of Jerry's generosity and trust. She begins stealing money from Jerry, forging checks for cash. But when Jerry finds out, he confronts Barbara, and instead of calling the police, he works it out with her. Because at the end of the day, he believed that she was taking good care of his mom, and he felt sorry for her kids, and he didn't want to kick them out on the streets. If only he had, maybe things would have turned out differently. Because not long after, Barbara would find out that Jerry has a little nest egg in the bank, $40,000.
Barbara finds out that Jerry has about $42,000 in his bank account. And all of a sudden she's going, that money could be mine.
Barbara didn't want to be a caregiver and provide a stable home for herself and her children with Jerry, who was just a really nice guy. She wanted that money, and she started thinking of ways to get it. And that's when she started planning Jerry's murder. Around the third week of March, Barbara asked the father of her youngest child if he'd murder Jerry. She explained to him that she tried to do it herself by poisoning his food with Drano and weed killer, but it wasn't working. She told her ex that she was going to have Jerry killed and then steal all of his money because she had control of his checkbook and his bank cards.
I didn't do a set amount like I told you. I offered to help him pay off some of his tickets.
He would move back in with you?
Yeah, I told him if he wanted to move back in stuff to him, he wouldn't have to pay his child support also.
But pretty much right after Barbara solicited her ex to kill Jerry, he stopped coming around her. And in fact, this guy was married. And when his wife found out about how he'd been spending time with his ex, Barbara, she wasn't happy about it, especially when he told her that Barbara had tried to get him to kill her boss after she tried to poison him. Apparently, Barbara's ex's wife called and left a message for her, basically saying, stay away from her man. Undeterred, Barbara thought up another idea on how to kill Jerry. She would enlist the help of her teenage daughter, Heather. Barbara sweetened the deal by offering her daughter a new dirt bike.
What mom says kill, fine, kill. Mom and I are tight. She's my mom. She's going to give me a dirt bike. Well, like I said, the kid never got the dirt bike. And neither the other kids that were roped into doing this, convinced they were doing a good deed.
In her scheming to kill Jerry, Barbara knew it would take more than just her 13-year-old daughter to kill a man. But she had a plan for that, to use her daughter as bait to lure a 17-year-old named Jeff Grote. Barbara poked and prodded her daughter into pursuing a relationship with Jeff. They had been dating briefly when Barbara encouraged Heather's new boyfriend to spend spring break at Jerry's house with her daughter.
It was spring break. He wanted to spend the week at our house. So I made him call his mom, make sure it's okay. And like I said, most of his time was downstairs until Jerry left because he couldn't come upstairs.
According to Burl, Barbara had used her daughter, Heather, to lure Jeff into the murder plot.
She picks up this kid who I think is like 17, and with her mother's approval, she takes him back to their place and has sex with him. This was on purpose. Her mother encouraged her to do this. And when the kid comes out of the bedroom having had sex with her daughter, there's the mother waiting to talk to him. She's not there to talk to him about safe sex. She's there to talk to him about murder. Hey, you're stripping my daughter, do me a favor, murder my employer. And they enlist him.
Barbara adds fuel to the fire because she lies to Jeff, telling him that Jerry is abusive to her daughter, Heather. At first, when Jeff is asked to participate in the murder plot, he says no, he won't do it. But that changes when Barbara offers to buy him a car.
I didn't offer him a certain amount of money, or I offered to help him get a car, and I would buy him a few clothes and stuff like that.
Now that Jeff is on board, Barbara tells him that he needs to recruit a couple of his friends to help take Jerry down, which he does, a set of cousins who who are 14 and 12 years old. Heather's best friend, Miriam, is also recruited in the murder plot after she's told that Jerry has been abusive to Heather, which wasn't true.
It was an indoctrination process. Oh, poor your best friend Heather, poor dear, is so mistreated by Jerry. We really should teach him a lesson.
Okay, so I drink a lot of water. At least I try to. Mostly because I can feel the difference when I don't. I just don't like that icky feeling when you've had too many chips and not enough water and your rings start to feel all tight on your fingers. I mean, it's not rocket science. Our bodies are 60% water, so it makes sense that it's a good thing to stay hydrated. But the last thing that I want to do after a jog or hike is gulp down unhealthy water. For me and for my family. I mean, it may seem like a little thing, but you'd be surprised that a lot of tap water just isn't clean. Which is why you've got to check out AquaTrue, a water purifier that uses a 4-stage reverse osmosis purification process. It's a mouthful, but basically, the AquaTrue purifier is so good, it removes 15 times more contaminants than ordinary pitchers. And as a busy mom, what I love about AquaTrue are all of the options. They have water purifiers that fit every type of home, from installation-free countertop purifiers, which is what we have, to higher capacity under-the-sink options. Best of all, the water tastes fantastic, by itself or in the coffee that I make at home all the time. I can truly taste the difference compared with our old water filter, which never really had a place of honor in our home. I mean, it was like on the counter or in the pantry or in the sink or on the table. You get the idea. Today, our AquaTrue water purifier has a home on our counter. It was really easy to set up, and the kids were kind of impressed when they watched the purification process as it was happening. So, if you're looking for peace of mind and delicious water, try AquaTrue. And when you order AquaTrue, it comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. And because you're a Criminal Mischief listener, you'll receive 20% off any AquaTrue purifier. Just go to aquatrue.com, that's AQUATRU.com, and enter code MISCHIEF at checkout. That's 20% off any AquaTrue water purifier when you go to aquatrue.com and use promo code MISCHIEF. MISCHIEF.
This Friday, Jamie Lee Curtis and Lindsay Lohan are back to switch things up in Disney's Freakier Friday.
OMG, yes.
It's an absolute riot.
Woo!
And the only movie that can be described as
So much weirder than the last time. What last time?
it's the frequel
You ready?
we've been waiting for.
That absolutely slays.
What deeply out-of-touch old person came up with that?
You did.
Wow.
Don't miss the comedy event of the summer for all ages. Disney's Freakier Friday in theaters this Friday. Get tickets now. Rated PG. Parental guidance suggested.
It was Friday, April 13th, 2001, and the assembled teens have congregated at Jerry's house. Jeff, Heather's boyfriend, is hiding in Evelyn's room, waiting for Jerry to come home.
And then Jeff waits in the bedroom with a big bat.
Where did he get that big bat at?
It was one of Heather's old bats.
What color is that bat?
It's green with kind of silver, it was a little slugger,
Is it aluminum or wood?
aluminum.
The 2 kids he's recruited are also lying in wait within the house, armed with little wooden Mariner baseball souvenir bats. Heather and Miriam, her 14-year-old best friend, are also on standby. Meanwhile, Barbara is in the basement. She tells her assembled crew of teenagers who are readying to ambush and kill Jerry that she needs to stay below with her 11-year-old son and 7-year-old daughter. And Evelyn, Jerry's mom, in the ultimate cruelty, would be wheeled into the dining room to watch what would happen next. At around 11 o'clock that night, Jeff would hear Jerry coming inside the house. When he's a few steps in, near the kitchen, Jeff silently makes his way into the living room, where he ambushes an unwitting Jerry, whacking him in the back of the head with the aluminum baseball bat. Jerry stumbles to the kitchen floor. He keeps repeating, "Whoa, what's going on?" as he tries to make sense of what's just happened to him. But there's no answer, other than another blow lobbed by Jeff, which knocks Jerry to the floor. By then, Jeff's recruits, the 14 and 12-year-old cousins, are on Jerry, and they begin swinging their wooden souvenir bats over and over again. At some point, Heather begins stabbing Jerry repeatedly with a 10-inch kitchen knife. It isn't long before Jerry, lying in a pool of blood, is motionless, but they can tell he's still breathing as Jeff checks for a pulse. Heather's best friend, Miriam, squeamish, tries to leave, heading back down to the basement, but Barbara won't allow that.
Jerry comes home and he's immediately attacked with baseball bats. You gotta go ping, the metal ones. He's hit in the back of the head with a baseball bat, falls to the ground, and they're kicking him, they're hitting him with the baseball bat. And Heather delivers the coup de grace, so to speak. She comes running up the stairs to the basement where her mother is kind of doing cheerleading. Go get him, kids. And she comes up with a knife and stabs him several times. Her best friend, who was downstairs in the basement, gets real upset, wants to run away. And Barbara grabs and says, how can you run away when your best friend is upstairs killing somebody? We need you to be supportive.
Miriam picks up the aluminum bat and takes a hard swing at the back of Jerry's head, so hard they can hear the fracturing of Jerry's skull. When Barbara is told that Jerry is dead, she and her younger children will come upstairs and survey the carnage. Jerry's body lying in a pool of blood and gore. It's then that Barbara tells everyone to start cleaning, expecting her younger children to help. Her 7-year-old uses napkins to sop up blood, to pick up pieces of brain matter, and Jerry's teeth, the ones that had been knocked out.
She helped clean up the blood. Gee, Mommy, what a good job I'm doing, cleaning the brains and blood off the wall.
Jerry is rolled up in sheets from his bed. A wheelbarrow is fetched and brought to the kitchen. The nose is tipped down, and collectively, they push Jerry's body inside, then wheel him out to his own truck and load his body into the back of his Dodge pickup.
We're still cleaning up, and
Who's helping clean up?
mostly I did the wheelbarrow, held the wheelbarrow pretty much for him. But
Where did the wheelbarrow come from?
From out in the backyard.
Who got that?
Jeff did.
So
Jeff
you-
brought the wheelbarrow
You
in.
held the wheelbarrow.
It was on its side, and he asked if I would help turn it up for him. I kind of helped turn it up, to roll the body because it was heavy. I was on the back and he was on the front. Jeff wheeled it through the dining room to the back porch to load it into the Dodge truck. The tailgate does not come down on the truck. So Jeff made some planks with some boards, he can wheel it up. What kind of crashed, so he just kind of let the body lay down and then he put the wheelbarrow on top of it.
They plan to take Jerry's body to the woods, but when Jeff turns the ignition in the truck, it won't start. Jerry's Firebird is backed up next to the truck, and his body is transferred from the bed into the hatchback of the Firebird.
He gets put into the back, and then the back seat is laid down, and he's put in back there.
By the back, you mean the trunk? Or
The hatchback, yes. Then they closed it, and Jeff's like, I know this place out in Maryville, way past Tulalip, just follow me.
They drive Jerry's body to a remote spot on the Tulalip Indian Reservation. At a forested ridge, they pull over, then roll Jerry's body down the embankment. Before they leave, they throw the silver aluminum bat down with him. Afterwards, they're starving, and Barbara treats everyone to a meal at Denny's on Jerry, using his credit card to pay. It was around 3 a.m. when they returned to Jerry's house and went to bed.
She never once considered what to do once he was dead. She knew she wanted the money. She devoted a great deal of time to arranging his murder by her daughter and her friends and other people she recruited. But once the body hit the floor, she had no plans beyond that. She had not thought through, what do I do then? So it made it pretty easy to catch her.
On April 18th, 5 days after Jerry's murder, his son Greg arrived at SeaTac Airport with his wife Teresa. The couple had flown in from Arkansas to visit Jerry. Greg knew about his father's cancer diagnosis, how important this visit was to both of them, as it very well could be one of the last times that they got to spend time together. However, Greg and Teresa were surprised when Jerry didn't show up to pick them up at the airport. They kept calling his house, but the phone just kept ringing and ringing. Jerry wasn't the type of father who didn't show up for his kids, so Greg was worried. Eventually, he and his wife caught a shuttle that took them directly to Jerry's home in Everett, and they were surprised to see that all the shades were pulled down and that the doors were locked. As they stood outside, the next-door neighbor came over and said that he had seen Barbara and her kids load up a U-Haul earlier that day at around 12 o'clock. but the neighbor hadn't seen Jerry in 3 or 4 days. Greg found an unlocked window, and he crawls inside. And he's shocked when he sees his grandmother, Evelyn, sitting in her wheelchair at the kitchen table. It's a pitiful sight. She has shreds of paper in her mouth that she'd been trying to eat. She'd been so hungry, and the only thing she'd been able to reach on the table was a magazine.
The son looks like the father. So when the grandmother who'd been left there soiled herself in the bloodstained wheelchair after her son had been murdered, she sees her grandson, who she thinks is her son. And she's so happy to see him, but she was dehydrated. She hadn't been changed. She hadn't been watered.
Everyone began to worry. First, Jerry didn't pick up his son at the airport, and now to see the state of his mother, he would never leave his mother alone like this. Where could he be? The seriousness of the situation ramped up when Greg heard a knock at the door and was shocked to find a social worker from Adult Protective Services who says that they had received an anonymous call from a woman who had reported that Barbara Opel was poisoning Jerry, and they believed he could be in danger. Now, remember earlier how Barbara had tried to get her ex to kill Jerry? Well, that anonymous caller would turn out to be his wife. Apparently, when she found out that Barbara had tried to get her husband to kill someone after she'd revealed to him that she'd been unsuccessful in her attempts to poison him, she called the police. Jerry's son immediately called the police. And when a responding officer searched the home, she found blood splattered on Evelyn's wheelchair. Police began looking for Jerry Hyman and Barbara Opel. As it would turn out, they wouldn't have to look very far. Barbara and her kids, along with Jeff, had checked into a Motel 6. When police showed up at their room, they asked if Barbara and the kids would come down to the station to answer some questions about Jerry. Barbara agreed. During her interview with police, she would tell them that she had no idea where Jerry was, that she'd last seen him at 11:30 the day before they'd moved out of his house. And as for the care of Evelyn, she assumed that Jerry had plans to take care of his mother, because he was the one that said he wanted Barbara and her kids out of his house, which is all to say that Barbara Opel stuck to her story. Detectives would interview Barbara's children separately, and at first, her 2 older kids stuck to the story that Barbara had told them to tell as well, that they had no idea where Jerry was. However, when Barbara's youngest child, her 7-year-old daughter, was interviewed, she would tell investigators that Jerry was dead. Soon, Barbara's 11-year-old son came clean as well, offering to take the investigators to where they had dumped Jerry's body. A detective looks over an embankment, and he sees what appears to be a dark-colored object about 40 feet down the slope. Upon closer inspection, as he gets closer, he can see a pair of black cowboy boots with the toes pointing up outside of a dark-colored blanket.
So was she a charismatic? I mean, she would have to be charismatic to get these kids to...
Well, she was also not so much charismatic in a charming way, but shall we say domineering in a charismatic way. A very forceful personality, large woman, stern woman, a lot of energy behind her presentation. And it was always what Mom says goes. Plus, they told the young man, they said that Jerry, the guy they wanted killed, had been very abusive to Heather, which wasn't true. But they painted this story of poor little 14-year-old Heather, who you were just having sex with, has been persecuted by Jerry, which wasn't true at all. He was very, very nice to her. But she created this entire scenario, we're going to get him, And besides, we're going to get a bunch of money. What would you like to buy with the money we're going to get?
In April of 2003, Barbara Opel would go on trial for the murder of Jerry Hyman. Her defense was that she wasn't the one to kill Jerry. It was her daughter, Heather, Jeff, and the other teenage recruits who were responsible for his death. But the jury didn't buy it. She would be found guilty and sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. Jeff Grote, Heather Opel's 17-year-old boyfriend, would plead guilty to first-degree murder and would be sentenced to 50 years in prison. 14-year-old Miriam Oliver, Heather's best friend, would be sentenced to 22 years in prison. The other 2 recruits, Kyle Boston, who was 14, would be sentenced to 18 years, and his unnamed 12-year-old cousin was tried as a juvenile. and was released when he was 21 years old. Heather Opel, Barbara's daughter, received a 22-year sentence and was released in October of 2023 after serving 20 years. Up next, Criminal Mischief bonus content. Here, my co-host Brandon Morgan and I will discuss the case in more detail. And as always, thanks for listening. From Cloud 10, Criminal Mischief is a pie-in-the-sky production recorded in the beautiful Pacific Northwest. We're produced by Brandon Morgan and myself, music by Soundstripe. I'm Carolyn Osorio, your writer and host.